Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter ecosystem. This is the part 2 of the lecture, and in today's session we'll be discussing NCERT section 12.3 and 12.4. This is the disclaimer. So let's understand the objectives of today's session. So first of all, we'll be talking about the process of decomposition. So we will be discussing the 5 main steps involved in decomposition. So these steps are fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, and mineralization. We'll also talk about the role of decomposers and detritivores in breaking down the organic matter into simple inorganic substances. Then we will focus on the factors affecting the rate of decomposition. So within this, we'll be talking about chemical composition of the detritus and the climatic condition which affects the decomposition rate. We'll also talk about the energy flow in the ecosystem and the importance of the solar radiation. We'll also talk about the 2 types of food chains, grazing food chain and detritus food chain. In the end, we'll be talking about the concept of trophic levels and biomass. Okay, so today we'll be talking about the decomposition, which is the NCERT section 12.3. We'll also talk about the energy flow. Then we will summarize the entire session. We'll discuss some NCERT based questions which are based on this topic. Then there'll be some keynotes that will help you memorize these topics. Okay, in the end, there'll be some interesting questions which will enhance your critical thinking ability. Okay, so let's start with today's session. So today we'll be talking about the topic decomposition. So let's start by looking at the earthworms. So you might have heard about the earthworms. They are known as the farmer's friend. This is because they play a really important role in the ecosystem, especially in soil health. So earthworms are like tiny gardeners working underground to help plants grow. Now they break down complex organic matter like dead leaves and plants, and they also loosen the soil as they move through it. Let's have a look at the definition of decomposition now. So decomposition is carried out by the decomposers such as fungi and bacteria. These tiny organisms break down complex organic matter, also known as detritus. As decomposers work, they convert complex substances into simpler inorganic ones like carbon dioxide, water, and nutrients. Now, these simpler substances can then be used by plants to grow and completing the cycle. So, decomposition is like nature's way of recycling, making sure nothing goes to waste in the ecosystem. Let's talk about the term detritus now. So in ecosystem, detritus refers to all the dead organic matter like fallen leaves or dead animals that ends up on the ground. Now this material is crucial part of how nutrients are recycled in nature. Okay, now let's see what makes up the detritus. So it includes dead plants remains such as leaves, bark and flowers, as well as the dead bodies of animals and even their fecal matter. Detritus is not just waste, it's actually the raw material for decomposition. So this means it's the starting point for breaking down complex organic matter into simpler substances. Now, let's look at the important steps involved in decomposition. So decomposition is not a single event, but a series of processes that gradually break down the detritus. The first step is fragmentation. This is when larger pieces of detritus are broken down into smaller bits, often by physical forces like wind or by animals such as earthworms and insects, which are detritivores. Okay, next step is leaching. Here we'll talk about leaching as well. So in this step, water moves through the detritus and dissolve the soluble substances, carrying them deeper into the soil. Next one is catabolism. Here microorganisms like bacteria and fungi break down the complex organic molecules in detritus into simpler compounds. Okay, and the last steps are humidification followed by mineralization. So humidification is just formation of humus, and mineralization is when remaining organic matter is converted into inorganic nutrients like nitrates and phosphate that plant can absorb. Okay, so we'll be talking about these steps in detail today. Let's talk about the process flow of decomposition. So decomposition is a step-by-step process that breaks down dead plants and animals, recycling nutrients back into the environment. First, let's talk about the fragmentation. So detritivores like earthworms and termites, they are nature's shredders. They break big piece of dead materials into smaller bits. This is important because it increases the surface area, making it much easier for microbes to do their job next. Now, the process by which detritivores such as earthworm and termites break down detritus into smaller particles is known as fragmentation. So here, detritus, they are breaking down detritivores, they are breaking down detritus into smaller particles. Means they are making fragments. This process significantly increases the surface area of detritus, making it more accessible for enzyme release by decomposers such as bacteria and fungi to perform catabolism. Okay, so here the surface area is increased for microbial action. Next step is leaching. Now, the process of leaching correctly describes water-soluble inorganic nutrients moving down into the soil horizon, eventually precipitating as unavailable salts, often due to excessive rainfall or irrigation. Okay, so these water-soluble inorganic nutrients, okay, they move underground into the soil horizon along with the water, and they eventually precipitate as unavailable salts. Next step is catabolism. See, bacterial and fungal enzymes degrade detritus into simple inorganic substances, and this process is known as catabolism. Okay, in catabolism, there is a breakdown of complex molecules with the help of living organisms by enzymatic action, leading to the release of energy and the formation of simple inorganic compounds. So here, from the detritus, simple inorganic substances or compounds are produced by enzymatic actions of the microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi. So these are the decomposers actually. Now this enzymatic breakdown occurs on the surface of the fragmented detritus and releases energy. Okay. Now it is very important to realize that these steps, they don't occur one after the other. These all steps occur simultaneously. Okay, so there is an important note here which says that all of the above steps, fragmentation, leaching, and catabolism, they are operating simultaneously on the detritus. Now, next steps are humidification and mineralization. Now, both of these steps, they occur during the process of decomposition in the soil, but are distinct stages. Humidification is the formation of humus, a stable, dark-colored organic matter from the microbial breakdown of dead plants and animals. Mineralization then follows, where microbes further degrade the humus to release inorganic nutrients and compounds back into the soil, which can then be used by the plants. Okay, so let's first talk about the step humidification. Now, this process leads to the buildup of the humus, which is a dark colored shapeless substance. Okay, so here in humidification, there is accumulation of dark colored amorphous substance called humus. Now let's talk about the properties of the humus. The humus is special because it has several important characteristics that makes it valuable for soil health. First, humus is highly resistant to microbial action. This means that unlike other organic matter, it doesn't break down easily. Second, the humus decomposes at an extremely slow rate. So this slow breakdown help it remain in the soil for a long time, acting as a stable reservoir of nutrients for the plant. Okay, so humus decomposes at a very slow rate. Yeah, that's why the soil fertility is maintained for a long time. Yeah, because the nutrients they remain in the soil for a longer time. The humus is like a stable reservoir of the nutrients for the plants. Now, finally, the humus is colloidal, which means it can hold on to water and nutrients very effectively. Now, this property makes humus a crucial nutrient reservoir for the plants. To sum up, humus is essential for healthy soil because it stores nutrients, holds water, and supports plant growth. Next step is mineralization. So let's see what is happening in mineralization. So humus is further degraded by microbes through a process called mineralization, where bacteria and fungi break down the complex organic matter of the humus, releasing inorganic nutrients like carbon dioxide and water. Now, what happens as the microbes break down humus even further? So they release inorganic nutrients back into the ecosystem. Now let's have a look at the diagram showing the process of the decomposition. So here you can see the leaves, they have fallen from the trees. Okay. So first of all, you can see this is the detritus. They have just shown a green leaf which falls on the ground. Now this leaf, you can see this can be eaten by insects and the other animals as well. And the nutrients and energy, they enter into the food web now. Now what will happen is some of the nutrients, they will leach into the soil by, you can say, by chemical action. Clear? So leaf has fallen on the ground. These leaves are eaten by the herbivores. Okay. They are, you can say, broken into fragments by the detritivores. Then what happens next step is the leaching. Okay. Now this leaf can also be decomposed by the fungi. So they have shown mushroom, which is a fungi. Clear? So here they have written leaves partially consumed by the decomposers such as fungi and the bacteria. Okay, clear? Now you can see these decomposers, they are further eaten up by the detritivores. Here, and finally the humus is formed. So this organic rich soil, this is the actually humus. And then after the humus, you have the next step, mineralization, where humus is further broken down by the microorganisms to form inorganic nutrients, which are added into the soil, and then plant again can take up these nutrients from the soil. It can absorb these nutrients through their roots and use it for their growth and development. Okay, so this is showing you the process of decomposition. The first step is the fragmentation, which is done by the detritivores. Next step is the leaching. Then you have the catabolism. Okay, here decomposers are playing a great role here, such as fungi and bacteria. And then these decomposers are again, you can say, eaten up by the detritivores. and then the humus is formed, and then after the humus is formed, the next step is mineralization. Now let's talk about the factors affecting decomposition. The first one is oxygen availability. So oxygen is a major player in decomposition. Next one, decomposition is mostly an aerobic process, which means it needs oxygen to happen efficiently. Okay, here. So most of the decomposers, they work best when oxygen is present. Presence of oxygen is crucial for the activity of most decomposer microorganisms. So these tiny organisms like bacteria and fungi, they are like workers in the recycling plant. They need oxygen to do their job as well. Okay, without oxygen, their activity slows down. Now, anaerobic means oxygen depleted conditions. Okay. So, anaerobic conditions significantly slow down decomposition because most decomposing microorganisms, such as bacteria and fungi, require oxygen for respiration and metabolic activity. Okay, next one is chemical composition of the detritus. Let's talk about this. Now, you can see the rate of decomposition also depends on the chemical composition of the detritus. So detritus that's rich in nitrogen and water soluble substances like sugars decompose quickly. Okay. So detritus rich in nitrogen and water soluble substances like sugars decompose quickly. On the other hand, detritus that is rich in lignin and chitin decomposes much more slowly. So lignin is found in wood and chitin is a substance found in the insect shells. Okay, both are tough and hard to break down. The next one are the climatic factors. So this includes the temperature. Temperature is one of the most important climatic factors that influences life in the ecosystem. Now, warm temperatures favors decomposers activity. Decomposers are like nature's recyclers. They break down dead plants and animals. Okay. Now, you can see here decomposition slows down in the cold environment. Okay. So, for example, at high altitudes or in polar regions, the cold slows down the decomposition. That's why you might find layers of dead leaves or even animals' remains that take years to break down in these places. Now let's talk about the moisture. Now, moist environment enhance decomposition. The water helps decomposers do their job, making the recycling of nutrients much faster. Now, but too much or too little moisture can be a problem. Extreme dryness can stop decomposition almost completely, while too much water can create conditions with less oxygen, slowing things down as well. So both temperature and moisture need to be just right for ecosystem to function smoothly. Okay, let's talk about the optimal conditions for the decomposition. So warm and moist environment does favor the process of decomposition, as these conditions provide the optimal environment for the microorganism and enzymes responsible for breaking down dead organic matter. Let's talk about the inhibitory conditions for the decomposition. Now, low temperature and anaerobiosis means lack of oxygen inhibit decomposition because the process is largely oxygen dependent and carried out by microorganisms whose metabolic activity is reduced by cold conditions. As a result, organic matter can build up over time, leading to environments like peat bogs. In these places, you might find layers of plant material that have been preserved for thousands of years because decomposition is so slow. The balance of temperature and oxygen really shapes how ecosystem recycle nutrients. Now let's talk about the energy flow. Okay, so except for deep sea hydrothermal ecosystems, sun is the only source of energy for all ecosystems on Earth. Okay, sun is the main source of energy for life on the Earth. Okay, now let's talk about photosynthetically active radiation. So this is the part of sunlight that plant can actually use for photosynthesis. Now, less than half of the sunlight that reaches Earth is actually PAR. So even though sun gives off a huge amount of energy, only a small portion is in the right form for plant to use. Okay, but it gets even more selective. Out of that PAR, plants are only able to capture about 2 to 10%. Even though plants capture such a small amount of sun's energy, this tiny fraction is enough to support all life on the earth. Every animal, fungus, and microorganism depend on this captured energy directly or indirectly. It's really important to understand how the solar energy moves through the ecosystem. Okay, so we will see that energy flows from the sun to plant and then through all the different organisms in the community, like a chain of, we can say, dominoes. Okay, so it is like a food chain. Now, all living things, whether they are animals, fungi, or even humans, depend on producers, mainly plants, for their food. Some eat plants directly, while others eat animals that have eaten plants. So, this shows how interconnected everything is. Okay, so all the organisms are dependent on the food or for their food on producers directly or indirectly. Herbivores are directly dependent on the producers, whereas the carnivores they are indirectly dependent on the producers. Because these carnivores they are feeding on the herbivores, but these herbivores they gain biomass by eating the producers, which are the plants. Okay, so this established the unidirectional flow of energy from the sun to the producers and then to the consumers. So energy flows in one direction from sun to the producers and then to the consumers. Let's talk about the energy flow. That energy flow is unidirectional. Now notice that the energy captured by the autotrophs like plants using sunlight to make food does not go back to the sun. Once the sun's energy is absorbed by the plants, it cannot be returned. Now let's see what happens when herbivores eat those plants. Now the energy they get from the plants doesn't go back to the plants. Okay. Now energy moves through successive trophic levels. So energy keeps moving through different trophic levels. First from plants to the herbivores and then to the carnivores and so on. Now, each group in the food chain gets energy from the level below it. Finally, it's important to realize that with each step, some energy is lost as heat to the environment. This is why energy can't be recycled in an ecosystem. Now, let's examine how ecosystems follow the second law of thermodynamics. Now, the law that states energy naturally spreads out and becomes less organized is the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, so this law states that energy naturally spreads out and it becomes less organized. So, in biology, this principle manifests as entropy, a measure of a system's disorder. And this means that living things must constantly expend energy to maintain their complex ordered structures against this universal tendency towards disorder. Okay. So second law of thermodynamics is related to entropy, which means a disorder. So disorders, okay, so this randomness, the disorder, this increases, this entropy keeps on increasing. So living organism, they must constantly spend energy to maintain their structures against the universal tendency towards the disorder. Okay, so this, you can say, energy flow also follows second law of thermodynamics. It follows first law of thermodynamics also, that energy cannot be created, neither it be energy cannot be created nor be destroyed. It can be converted to one form, from one form to another form. Now notice how ecosystem need a constant supply of energy to keep everything running smoothly. Now, to synthesize the molecules they require to counteract the universal tendency towards increasing disorderness. Okay, this we have already discussed. The living organisms, they constantly need to spend energy to counteract the universal tendency towards increasing disorderness. Now let's talk about the trophic levels. So trophic levels are like steps in the food chain showing who eats whom and how energy flows. Okay, the first trophic level is occupied with the producers, which are the green plants in the ecosystem. So they are known as producers because they make their own food using sunlight. Now, in land-based or terrestrial ecosystem, the main producers are herbaceous plant like grasses and flower, and woody plants like trees and shrub. Okay, so these are primary energy makers for all other organisms in that environment. In aquatic ecosystem, the producers are a bit different. Here, tiny organisms like phytoplankton as well as algae and some larger aquatic plants play the producer role, means they are producers. Okay. Now, all these producers are called autotrophs, which means self-feeders. They use sunlight to make their own food through photosynthesis. Okay. The next trophic level is occupied by the primary consumers. The primary consumers are known as the herbivores, means they eat plants. Examples are grasshoppers, zooplankton, and cow. Okay. Our next trophic level is occupied by the secondary consumers. So these are the carnivores that eat the herbivores. For example, bird that eat insects, wolves that hunt the deer, or fish that eat zooplankton. The next one is the tertiary consumer or the top carnivores. So these animals like humans and lions eat other carnivores. They sit at the top of the food chain and have few or no natural predators. So this shows how energy contributes to flow upward, but with fewer organisms at each level. Here in this image, you can see the trophic level at different stages. Okay. Clear? So here you can see the first trophic level is occupied by the producers. Example of the producers are plants, okay, phytoplankton, grasses, and trees. So these producers, they are generating all the biomass, they are generating all the energy on which all of the organisms, whether they are herbivores or carnivores, they depend on the energy produced by the producers. Second trophic level is occupied by the herbivores. They are the primary consumers. Examples are zooplankton, grasshopper, and cow. Then the third trophic level is occupied by the carnivores, which are the secondary consumers. Examples are bird, fish, and wolf. And then the tertiary consumers, these are the top carnivores, and they occupy the fourth trophic level. Examples are man and lion. Similarly, you can see in the other diagram, the energy flow is shown to you. Here. Now here you can see each level obtains energy by consuming organisms from the level below it, with energy and biomass decreasing at each successive level. So in an ecosystem, energy flows from the first trophic level, means producers, to the second trophic level, means herbivores, and then to the third trophic level, which are carnivores that eat herbivores, and finally to the fourth trophic level, which are the top carnivores. And there is a significant loss of energy at each level due to 10% rule, where only about 10% of the energy is transferred from one level to the other. So here you can, in this image, you can see the plants, they are absorbing the photons. Okay, they are absorbing the light energy and they are producing the biomass, they are producing the energy. They are occupying the first trophic level, and then you can see the second trophic level. These are the herbivores. Suppose this is the caterpillar which is feeding on the plants. Here you can see the energy is lost in the form of heat. Okay. And only 10% of the energy is being transformed to the next trophic level. And then you can see this caterpillar, this is being eaten by the bird. Bird in return is eaten up by the, you can say, this eagle. Okay, so here we have the four trophic levels. Energy is being transferred from first trophic level to second, and then to the third, and finally to the fourth. And at each step, energy is being lost, and only 10% of the energy is being transferred to the next trophic level. Okay, ultimately, all of these organisms, they will die, including plant. They will form detritus that will be decomposed with the help of detritus and decomposers. And in this process also, energy is lost at each step. Let's talk about the food chain now. Okay, let's have a look at the definition of the food chain. So, a food chain is a sequence where each organism eats one before it and is eaten up by the one after. Okay, so it is a sequence of organism eating and being eaten through which energy is transferred. Now, each step is known as the trophic level. So, here is a visual example of the food chain. So, here you can see food chain is starting with the grasses, or you can see the plants. Now, grasshoppers, which are the herbivores, they are feeding on the plants directly. Then grasshoppers are eaten by the birds. Okay. Then birds are eaten by the snakes, and then snakes are eaten by the owls. And then you can see these organisms, they will degrade, they will die. Okay. Okay. They will add to the detritus, and this detritus will be broken down with the help of detritivores and the decomposers. So, mushroom is a decomposer. Okay. And after decomposition, the inorganic nutrients will be added into the soil, and the plant can again absorb these nutrients from the soil. So here in this image, you can see the producers, then primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Okay. And then you can see the top carnivores as well. And you can see finally all these organisms, they will be decomposed with the help of decomposers. Here, so this is the simple food chain. This is showing you all the trophic levels. Here you can see the energy flow is unidirectional from the producers to the consumers. Now let's talk about the type of the food chain. The first is the grazing food chain. So this is one of the main ways energy moves through the ecosystem. Okay. So grazing food chain always begins with the producers, which are plants. Now here sun is the main energy source fueling the whole ecosystem. So plants are basically absorbing the sunlight and it is converting sunlight into the food. For example, on land, grass gets energy from the sun. Then a grasshopper eats the grass, a frog eats the grasshopper, a snake eats the grass, and finally an eagle eats the snake. Okay, in water, it starts with tiny phytoplankton, which are like the grass of the ocean. Now they then moves to the zooplankton, which are, you can say, small fishes and large fishes. Okay, so this shows us how energy flows step by step through different living things in both land and water environments. Next one is the detritus food chain. So detritus food chain starts with the dead organic matter called the detritus. So detritus includes things like fallen leaves, dead animals, and other parts or animal remains. Now detritus food chain is made up of decomposers such as fungi and bacteria. Now, but decomposers aren't the end of the story. These decomposers themselves become food for the detritivores. Okay, detritivores, they are the organisms which feed on dead organic matter and which can also feed on decomposers as well. Now, in terrestrial ecosystem like forests, a much larger fraction of energy flows through the detritus food chain than through the grazing food chain. Okay, so what is happening in the terrestrial ecosystem? A much larger fraction of energy is flowing through the detritus food chain than the grazing food chain. So this occurs because a significant portion of plant biomass is not eaten up by the herbivores. Okay. Now, what happens? This plant will die and it will form the detritus. So, huge amount of detritus is formed. This dead organic matter is then broken down by the decomposers in the detritus food chain, which represents the primary pathway for energy and nutrient cycling for the plant. For the on the land, okay, so we can see in the terrestrial ecosystem, a much larger fraction of energy flows through the detritus food chain than through the grazing food chain. Why this is happening? We have discussed this. This happens because a significant portion of plant biomass is not eaten up by the herbivore. And when the plant die, it forms the detritus. A huge amount of detritus is formed. Now, this dead organic matter is broken down by the decomposers in the detritus food chain. Okay, clear? That's why we are saying in terrestrial ecosystem, much larger fraction of energy flows through DFC, detritus food chain, than through the grazing food chain. Okay, now let's talk about saprophytes. These are the organisms that get their nutrients by feeding on dead and decaying organic matter. Let's talk about the food web now. Okay, the food web is basically interconnection of the food chain, where the food webs are, you can say, quite complex. It is an interconnection of the food chains. Okay, how can you define food web? Food web is a natural interconnection of multiple food chains. So instead of a simple, you can say, line, you can imagine a web here. There are many different paths through, showing how energy and nutrients move through the ecosystem. Now, you can see why food webs are important, because they provide alternative pathway for the food. They increase the stability of the ecosystem. Yeah, so if this means that if one food source disappears, organism can find another food source. So this is maintaining the ecosystem stability. Okay, because in food chains, it is happening. An organism can find some other alternative pathway for the food as well. Okay, so this means if one food source disappears, organism can find another food source. Example, a snake in a grassland can eat a frog, okay, which is a secondary consumer, or a mouse, which is a primary consumer. So this is advantage of the food webs. Okay, snake can either eat the frog or it can also eat the mouse as well. Both of them occupy a different trophic level. One is secondary consumer, another one is the primary consumer. Okay, here you can see this is the image showing you simple food web. Obviously, you will have producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers here. Here. So now you can see a lot of the food chains are interconnected here. So starting with the, you can say plants or the grass, which are the producers. Okay, these producers are eaten up by the primary consumers, which are the herbivores. Then herbivores are eaten up by the, you can say, secondary consumers, which are the carnivore. Here, now here also you can see, suppose this is a sunflower or this is a plant. This can be eaten up by the grasshopper. Grasshopper can be eaten up by the another large insects. Okay, insect can be eaten up by the animal here, which occupies the, you can say, higher trophic level, which is the tertiary consumer. Okay, now this you can see the large insect can be eaten up by the frog as well. Okay, so here everything is interconnected. The food chains are interconnected. Okay, this mouse is a primary consumer. Here you can see in this diagram, mice is feeding on the grass. It eats the seeds of the plants. This mice can be eaten up by the eagle. This is one food chain. Now you can see another food chain. The mice, it can be eaten up by the frog as well. Okay, so this is another food chain. Here, so here you can see what is the benefit of the food chain. A single organism have, you can say, multiple food sources. So if one food source is not present, okay, or if it is exhausted, it can feed on the other food source belonging to another trophic level. Yes, so this maintains the stability of the ecosystem. Let's talk about the 10% law here. So Lindemann introduced this 10% law. So this principle was first described by ecologist Raymond Lindemann. Okay, so this law tells us how much energy actually get passed along as we move up each step in the food chain. So energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. For example, when the rabbits eat grass or when a fox eats the rabbit, energy is moving up the chain. Okay, so only about 10% of the energy is stored as the biomass. So only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next trophic level, and rest about 90% of the energy is lost. If about 90% is lost during the transfer, this energy is used up in the respiration, or this energy is simply not consumed at all, or it can be lost in the form of heat as well. Because of this big energy loss, the number of trophic levels in the food chain is limited, usually to just 4 or 5. This means we rarely see food chains with more than 5 steps because there just isn't enough energy left to support the another trophic level. Maximum number of trophic level will be 4 or 5 because now not much energy is left to support another trophic level. Here, so we can say that the energy available is too low to support a population or support another trophic level. Okay, here is an flow chart showing the energy transfer according to 10% law. Suppose you can see sunlight, which is the main source of energy. Now sun is pouring down a huge amount of energy. Here it is 10 lakh joules. Now producers, they absorb this light. Suppose they are capturing 1% of the sunlight, which is 10,000 joules of energy. Then the primary consumers, which are the herbivores, which occupy the second trophic level, they consume plants. So here you can see from the producers to these primary consumers, only 10% of the energy will be transferred. So 10% of 10,000 joule will be 1,000 joule. Rest energy is lost. Now again from the primary consumers to secondary consumers, which are the carnivores, which occupy the third trophic level. Okay, again 10% of the energy is transferred. So 10% of 1,000 will be 100 joules of energy. Now tertiary consumers, which are the top carnivores occupying the fourth trophic level, they consume these carnivores and only 10% of the energy is transferred. So 10% of 100 joule will be 10 joule of energy. Now after that, not much energy is left to support one more trophic level. So that's why we have four or maximum 4 or 5 trophic levels in the food chain. Let's talk about the term standing crop now. Now, let's have a look at the definition. So standing crop refers to the total mass of living material or biomass in a particular trophic level at a specific time. Now, it's important to know the standing crop can be measured in two ways, either by the mass of living organism, which we call biomass, or simply by counting the number of individuals in a unit area. For example, we might measure the standing crop of grass in kilograms per square meter or count the number of rabbits in a field. Okay, now let's summarize this entire session. So we talked about the decomposition. Decomposition is like nature's recycling system. It breaks down dead plants and animals into simpler substances that can be reused. So this process involves various steps: fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, and mineralization. Now, earthworms and other detritivores, they help in decomposition by breaking down detritus into smaller particles. We also discussed the flow of energy in the ecosystem. So, energy moves through an ecosystem. Okay, solar energy enters as sunlight and flows in one direction from plants, which are the producers, to animals, which eat them. And then the energy is transferred to other animals. So, this flow follows the law of thermodynamics, meaning energy is transferred but some of the energy lost as heat. The food chain show energy transfer between trophic levels, producers to primary consumers, secondary consumers, and then finally to the tertiary consumers. Okay, we also talk about the grazing food chain. Yes, so grazing food chain start with the producers, while detritus food chain begins with the detritus, which is the dead organic matter. Now, food chains interconnect to form food webs in the natural ecosystem. Now, energy decreases by 90% at each successive trophic level. So, only 10% of energy is transferred to the next trophic level. A standing crop refers to the biomass of the number of organisms at each level at a given time. Now, you can see temperature and soil moisture are key factors affecting the decomposition rate. So, in most warm and moist environment like tropical forest, decomposition happens quickly, while in cold or dry places, it slows down. Now let's discuss some NCERT based questions. So first question is the process of breakdown of detritus into smaller particles by detritivores is called. So you have the option leaching, catabolism, fragmentation, and humidification. What will be the correct answer? Let's have a look at the answer. Correct answer is option number C, fragmentation. So fragmentation is basically a mechanical process where detritivores break down larger pieces of dead organic matter into smaller fragments. This is primarily done by various detritivores like earthworms, millipede, termites, and other soil organisms. The process increases the surface area of detritus, making it more accessible for further decomposition. Now, after fragmentation, you have the leaching. So, leaching is the process where water-soluble nutrients are removed from detritus by the water. Okay. And the salt they precipitate. Okay. And they are now present in the unavailable form. Okay, unavailable salts. It is a physical process not involving organisms directly. Next step is catabolism. This is the breakdown of complex molecules into simpler ones during metabolism. Okay, while it's part of decomposition, it's not specifically the mechanical breakdown by detritive. Okay, next step is humidification. Okay, it is the process of formation of humus from decomposed organic matter. It's one of the final stages of the decomposition. Now, after humidification, you have the another step, mineralization. In mineralization, what happens? Finally, the organic matter is broken down into inorganic nutrients, and these nutrients are added into the soil. Okay, now the plants can again absorb these nutrients from the soil. Now, humidification leads to the formation of options of minerals, humus, water, and carbon dioxide. What will be the correct answer? Okay, option number B, humus is the correct answer. So, humidification is like nature's recycling system. When plants and animals die, microorganisms in the soil break down their remains. And this process transforms complex organic materials into dark nutrient-rich substance called the humus. So it is a complex biochemical process carried out by various microorganisms in the soil. What is the process? Dead plants and animals materials undergo decomposition. Microorganisms break down complex organic matter, and various organic substances are transformed into dark colored complex organic matter called the humus. Characteristic of the humus, so it is dark brown or black, rich in organic matter, and has complex chemical structure. It is rich in organic matter. And humus has a complex and heterogeneous chemical structure formed from the decomposition of plant and animals residues by the microorganism. It is important for the soil fertility as well because it is the storehouse of all the nutrients. It acts like a sponge, helping soil hold water and nutrients. Okay. Let's talk about the other options. So minerals are inorganic and already present in the soil. Water and carbon dioxide are released during decomposition, but humidification especially produces humus. Okay, here. Now carbon dioxide is released during decomposition, but not the main product of humidification. Let's discuss some keynotes. So decomposition breaks down complex organic matter into inorganic substances through fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, and mineralization. Energy flows in one direction only, okay, through the food chain and food webs from the producers to the consumers. Now, let's talk about the trophic levels. So we have, okay, the first trophic level is occupied by producers, second by the herbivores, and third by the carnivores. And we can have maximum of 4 to 5 trophic levels because at the end, not much energy is left to sustain one more trophic level. Humus is a dark nutrient-rich substance resistant to microbial action. Now, substances like lignin and chitin decompose slower than those rich in nitrogen and sugars. So, this determines the rate of decomposition. The chemical composition of the detritus depends you can say, affects the rate of decomposition. Only 2 to 10% of photosynthetically active radiation is captured by the plants. Now, there are some interesting questions for you. You have to critically analyze these questions. Question 1, if global warming increases soil temperature significantly, how would it affect the rate of decomposition and nutrient cycling in an ecosystem? And question number 2, a lake receives industrial effluents that kill most of the phytoplankton. Beside the obvious death of fish, what other changes might occur in the ecosystem? Next one, conservation area has too many deers, which are herbivores. If you cannot introduce predators or remove deer, what natural changes might eventually limit the deer population? The next one, a farmer notices that area with more earthworms have healthier crops. Why might this be the case, and how much the farmer naturally increase earthworm population? Next question, if a new species of insects arrives in a forest and starts eating all decomposing leaves before they can fully decompose, what might be the consequences? Okay, so with this, we have discussed the theory. Now let's discuss the DPP for this chapter. Let's begin with the first question. Which step in decomposition involves the breakdown of detritus into smaller particles by detritivore? You have to name this step in the decomposition. So you have the option leaching, catabolism, fragmentation, and mineralization. What is the correct answer? Okay, here fragmentation is the correct answer. It's the first step of the decomposition, where the detritus is broken down into smaller particles by the detritivores like earthworm and other insects. Next one, humus is characterized by being easily decomposable and rich in nitrogen. Next one, is it colloidal, amorphous, and resistance to microbial action? And then water soluble and rapidly mineralized. And the last option is high in lignin and chitin content. What will be the correct answer? Here, option number B is the correct answer. Colloidal, amorphous, and resistance to microbial action. This will be the correct answer. Okay, so humus is resistance to microbial action. So that's why it is slowly degraded, and that's why it is the, you can say, it is the reservoir of the nutrients. Next one, which climatic factors most significantly regulate the rate of decomposition? So options are wind speed and humidity, temperature and soil moisture, atmospheric pressure and sunlight, and last one is rainfall and altitude. What will be the correct answer? Okay, option number B is the correct answer. Temperature and soil moisture. Okay, so warm conditions and moisture, this increases the rate of decomposition, and the cold temperature, okay, it will decrease the rate of decomposition. Rate of decomposition also depends on the chemical composition of the detritus. Next one, which process releases inorganic nutrients into the soil from the humus? So options are leaching, mineralization, humification, and fragmentation. What would be the correct answer? The option number B, mineralization, is the correct answer here. Okay, so this is the last step during which the humus, okay, this is further broken down by microbial action, and you can say inorganic nutrients are produced from the organic matter. Organic matter is finally converted into inorganic nutrients. These inorganic nutrients, they, you can say, are added into the soil, and these can be absorbed by the plants. Next one, detritus rich in lignin and chitin decompose slower because these materials are water soluble. They lack complex organic matter. They are resistant to microbial degradation and last on the enhanced microbial activity. What is the correct answer? The option number C is the correct answer. They are resistant to microbial degradation. So these, you can say, compound lignin and chitin, these are very hard to degrade because they are resistant to microbial degradation. Okay, so if the content of lignin and chitin are more in the detritus, then the rate of decomposition will be slow. Okay, so with this we have discussed the DPP as well. All our answers are correct. So with this, we end this session. I hope this session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.